redesigning the meeting space, how it works, and what you get as far as ROI of transforming that space. So I've kind of hit on 3 different areas that we're just going to go over that you can incorporate this. I challenge everyone to kind of look at their agenda that they've done in years past and maybe think of where can we change it up a little bit, where does it make sense. And it may honestly just be one little room in the side when people first walk in that they know is there. It's a side room, they can escape a little bit. So we're just going to go through a little bit of those things and hit on that point. So, why furniture? Mallory, they talked about that peer-to-peer connection, how we're relearning things and how the brain is working when you're engaged and you're comfortable, and the connection that happens and how that connection of meeting is so important. This just takes that connection to a different level. So although it's amazing to network and get to know each other and you grow those relationships, this is another thing when you're sitting next to somebody on a sofa and you're like this, you're so engaged and you get a lot more out of it. So incorporating those kinds of things are very important on the engagement side. And it really does affect the ROI. When people talk about the meeting, whether it's the peer-to-peer side of you're not even listening to a speaker, you're in a hallway in a sofa, and you get something out of that kind of business lead, that's one element. But also when you're listening to a speaker and you're focused, and your shoulders are up front and you're comfortable and everything like that. So there is a lot of ROI to it. General sessions. This is probably the #1 area where we're seeing the growth in adding furniture and redesigning the space. Listen, it doesn't have to be every single piece of butts and seats is a fancy sofa that's suede and blue and tufted. It's not about that. It is about having a visual impact, but they're comfortable, and there's a few different ways. So we have a few different just images here where the first one, the blue fancy one, is the first few rows are sofas. The ones behind that are the in-house tables and linens, and then we have some highboys in the back. That also creates an ability for people to walk out the room quietly. You know, you always have those people that are on their devices or need to take a phone call, step out. You don't want them to cause a scene. You know, they're coming from over here, over there. So it's great to add those no matter what to a meeting. Those highboys in the back I find are always helpful. We have one here, just so you can see one little high top makes a difference. Hi back there. So there's various elements. Also something with doing the sofas in the front. Think incentive programs for your meeting. If you're doing sales, think about how that could become a VIP section. You can add an element to that sofa, a little giveaway on that piece. They feel so special right there. They're walking away with a little something extra. I bet you everyone else is going to try and get that seat next year. So that's another way to do it. And you're not transforming the whole room and spending a fortune on doing the entire room in sofas. It's just maybe 4 sofas in the front. Just one little element. Now, you could do the fabulous bucket seats for everyone too. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. But also too, on that side, we had things, tables in between that had either stuff with sponsor information, the education sessions, other elements that you can add, so it's not just something on the seat that they take and then put it on the floor. It's there, they can grab it. It's another way for the attendees to retain that information. It's not going away, it's there for them, that's their space. So thinking of things like that. Also to think about the color side of this as well, whether it's branding or it is just a good impact for the visual side. Think about if you have a corporation like Microsoft and their logo is so distinctive, you can have just basic chairs, so whether it be a shibari colored chair or a specialty chair in the blue, green, yellow, red blocks. And so when you walk into that room, you know exactly who you're there for. It is rows of chairs, totally fine to keep doing that setup, but you see who you're there for and what this meeting is about, and it's that company. Also having just individual tabletops for people, as we talked about millennials and they like to be engaged on their devices. That's a great way to have them being able to take notes and utilize things as well. Again, you don't have to do it for everyone. It's nice to have that element, but just different ways to incorporate it. And a little shout out here and to social tables and why I love them. It is sometimes very hard to imagine an empty ballroom and what it's gonna look like with furniture. They have done a brilliant thing and have partnered with some of the furniture and rental companies that are out there and added their CADs, so you can literally just drag and drop. And these are resources that are available to you in the meeting cities, AFR, but also they just partnered with Court as well. So there are other vendors out there that you can utilize and pull in. So even, I think, different color linens, then you can add and see how it all comes together. So if you're using in-house linens and chairs in the back, totally transforms space, right? And then another thing with this, just off a little bit of a tangent, utilizing pieces that can be reimagined and redesigned. So whether it's an armless sectional, that all of a sudden you can kind of pull these pieces apart from one another and transform it for day 2. So you can then turn these sofas into pods where they're facing each other and have various pods throughout the room. So that's also a budgeting thing. You can think of multi-use for those items, which is great. So kind of reimagining that general session side. So again, creating those VIP sections, various levels. Not only is it great for those people who can sneak out in the back, but also, opens up the sight lines and creates a visual impact. And I'm a big one for mixing things up. It doesn't always have to be the exact same thing in different various looks. And it also doesn't have to be in rows. I know I talked about that very briefly, about that one idea. But imagine, for instance, a question mark in the middle of something. And that's what your meeting is about. Maybe that's kind of your theme. Or if we had somebody who had the overall meeting theme that was move forward, and you could see throughout their whole branding of this meeting that it was like a record player, the V, if you were pressed on a cassette player, that's my going like way. The move forward kind of fast forward button, and you could see that it looked like that in the middle, which is a really cool way to incorporate their whole theme. So kind of just take another look at that when you're doing your branding and your mission for your meeting. It's just another way to tie it in. Serpentines are great, creates that kind of flow and fun. So the other thing is the recharge lounge. Again, everyone's connected to their devices. I think I see as I walked up, like almost every plug is kind of taken in here. People are looking at their battery life. It's 3 o'clock going, oh my goodness, I gotta recharge. Well, there is a table up there that you can plug in. Has a built-in outlet. You're not stepping away from the meeting. You're still listening to the speaker. You're maybe still being able to email. You can do this as a side area. You can do this in the back of the general session area, or you can do this as a separate space that's connected. This, again, really feeds on the ROI type where you are capturing your attendees. They're not stepping away. They're not going to their hotel room saying, I gotta catch up on 75 emails, I have to do this in a quiet spot. I'm only gonna get this done in my hotel room, and then you've lost them. This is an opportunity to say, they're captured, they're here, and we're gonna meet together and they're still connected. And then again, who knows, they may have an opportunity to meet somebody else in the recharge lounge, and then they're doing business in front of their device, and they can book something there in front of their computer and sign a contract, which is always great. So for recharge lounge, what's really important is having the devices, the outlets for devices, not just a 3-prong plug, but the USB port as well, as most people, that's what they have. So the various kinds of cords are important, whether that's an Android or Apple device. And another way to add something to your meeting is hashtags or logoing certain things. So while they're there, in front of their device, put your hashtag on the table or on a chair or on the document that's right in front of them, and they're gonna be like, doing business here in the, hashtag social tables lounge kind of deal. And that's just another way to enhance that meeting side for you and still have them captured and talking about your meeting. So just again, some other things, branding, outlets, and what it does, as far as the psychological effect. They're not as stressed. They know that they have an area that they can go to, not worrying about stepping away from that meeting and their boss thinking that they went and hide somewhere. They're there, they're captured, which is always great. Educational pods. I think Valerie, they did an excellent job on talking about why meetings matter, and this has a lot to do with it, of having that connection, that involvement. Also something with this, when people are kind of in a circle environment, they feel as one. They're all on the same level, they're all communicating together, whether it's brainstorming or, but they're all open. Just that one signal that we're in a circle kind of has that effect. You know, think of it as you're at a round table, right? And everyone's in and gets involved. It's kind of the same thing. Now imagine if your CEO was in that circle on the same level as everyone else, or the head of a department on the same level as everyone else. Those people feel value. They're walking away feeling that they were a part of that process and that mission, and it's a wonderful environment to create. And you can do this by having different sessions in the same room or side rooms, so they have to move from one point to another. For the picture that's on the bottom of this, on the bottom left, this was a marketplace type setup. So there were businesses, so this is a business-to-business environment, and each person had their appointment in their area, and instead of just doing, you know, a rectangular table, we mixed it up, and then you could see the change in people, that interaction that people had. And even if it was 10, 15 minutes at each station, they really got something out of it. They walked away feeling like they were connected and they were involved in that, and that they really just built that relationship, which we've kind of talked about, of why meetings is important, is building that relationship just from that one certain setup. So you can do this either if it's on a marketplace trade show floor, you can do this in a separate room. But just those kinds of elements of having those pods and being able to have that kind of communication is awesome, and it's key to kind of redesigning. And you can see also too, this was a general session room on the right side that was reimagined. So we took some of the back, you know, dining ballroom chairs, put that with some sofas and mixed it up, which is kind of fun. It keeps it visually interesting. So that peer-to-peer, face-to-face that we've kind of talked about, and also why millennials and the way new business is happening. I don't think it's millennial specific. I do think it's new business in the way that's happening, but of what they're looking for. And we also talked about how millennials like to feel a little important. So this is also, you know, a way for them to see their value as part of the process, which is great. So those are kind of the three elements that I talk about when you're thinking of redesigning the space. Again, there's probably multi-points in your agenda that I challenge you to kind of look at and see, whether it's, you know, learning lounges or areas in the foyer that you're looking to just kind of create little pockets for people. Just don't think of that as a registration space. Think of that as a hub for people to kind of go to, refresh, learn from one another, breakout sessions. All those are kind of different variations of where you can find how to reimagine the space. So I don't expect, I know budget is a big issue. I don't expect you to think of, oh my gosh, I have this massive ballroom that I have to reimagine all of a sudden. Or, you know, all of my different breakout meetings are gonna have furniture or various elements. It could genuinely be one little side room that your attendees walk away with being able to have more ROI from. So those are kind of the ways to incorporate furniture. Did anyone have any feedback or questions about areas that they see that happening? No questions? Yes?
I'll talk about, because with you, breakout sessions, we're working on a couple breakouts. So it's not just in the general session, it's in the breakouts, and they're identical, but it's the people are mocking other people's, they're mocking somebody's room or lounge at their actual workplace, and they want to put it into breakout sessions. So I think it's really cool. It just kind of adds to a different flavor to each room. So
Yeah, so I'll talk on that just a little bit. I won't name names of what.
no, that's okay.
But in their office, they have reimagined the space where there are various sections, as you can think of, like with TVs and whiteboards with furniture by them, and then another little hub of just a hideaway with bar stools, next to their cafe, next to another little foosball table with furniture around it. And this is that kind of business mentality that they have reimagined that to say, you know, we understand that brainstorming that happens when people are just talking and free flowing is so important to the way we're successful that we've incorporated it in our office. And they realize what they get out of that, and now they're taking it to the meeting level. They're saying it's successful, we've seen the results, we've increased business and retention and costs, and we're gonna transform that into the meeting side, and it's important for us to incorporate that. And that particular company is a basic corporation, in all honesty. They're not a crazy tech company. They are not, you know, a Palo Alto kind of place. It's a corporation. And they're seeing that kind of thing. So although some of this might be something that you say, like, I don't know how we're gonna incorporate it, or we've done the past thing for 10 years, or we can't get them out of their molds, I think that there is something to say of just even creating a kind of little area like that if it's not in the main space. Anyone else? Okay. So now, this is the part that makes me a little giddy. The design trends that we're seeing, because I love how it all kind of trickles down and then winds up at events, and we get to walk into a ballroom or whatever and see completely transformed your room. It looked like that? Really? So also to your venues, talking about site inspections, these are all things to consider when you're having that conversation. How big is the space? Can it hold rigging? If we're gonna do a stage in the middle and have everyone encompassing that stage for the general session instead, can we rig TVs? So definitely, I think before I go into it, I do think that there is a need for transparency between the planners and the venues and the vendors. Share your budget. It's okay. If you tell me you have $2,000 to do something with, we'll do it. It's okay. We'll figure out a way to incorporate it, but I think we need to have an honest, transparent conversation for us all to get better and go where we need to go. So please bring us in, let's talk about it. But when you're in your site inspections, make sure you look at that room. Obviously there's a column in this ballroom, so we knew we had to cut a table behind it, but you could also do a curved bench around it, to utilize that and work with the space. So those are all things to kind of think about when you're walking through it. So just consider those things as well, as site inspections are important as far as aesthetics and layout. So there you go. Then two things that are really important. So now let's talk about where we're seeing some designs go. Patterns and prints. Don't get too overwhelmed by this. It's not too crazy. But the first picture that's on the top, I'm doing this, someone's doing a general session and they want it in New Orleans. And they wanted something that screamed New Orleans. They want to embrace the city. As we learned, millennials love the destination that they're going to and feeling like it was brought into the meeting. This to me is a very New Orleans print. So I was building that in so they knew exactly where they were. But those are all things and ways to kind of think about the destination or the room and have a little bit of fun. And it doesn't have to be a crazy print. It doesn't have to be on everything. You can just have 2 chairs like that's up there with a plain sofa, and it, does a little something different for it. The prints that we are seeing, geometrics, marble, geode is really popular right now. And then I think because that marble effect, if you've noticed that Pantone has that, and for the first time ever, they've done 2 colors, which is throwing all of us design people for a loop. But it is serenity and rose quartz kind of blended together. So you're gonna see a lot of that blended marbling together. And that could even, it doesn't even have to translate to the furniture side, but think of it on the lighting side of what that's gonna do and come together and blend a space. So definitely prints and patterns are a good way to enhance that. Also too, mixing naturals with metal. So if you're thinking of that cotton linen chair with that brass gold finish, whether it's a wood table with a gold finish or brass or rose gold or silver, those are kind of all really popular things as blending those together. If you notice, the way it kind of trickles down with design is it goes from the runway fashion Paris side, and it takes a while. Has anyone seen like Double Wears Prada and she talks about that blue sweater and where it came from? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's the same thing for events. It starts on the runway. So a few years ago, you know, you saw lace and those prints and patterns and things like that. We're seeing them now for events. So I always check there first to see what's going to come in a little while. But if you even then look at the home decor side of things, check High Point Market, even like Wayfair every now and then comes out with like their top 5 trends that they're seeing when they interview their designers. Those are great ways to see what's going to come through on the event side, because it will pass down to us and naturally where people want that kind of a feel. So that the metals with woods and things like that has been popular on the home side for a little while now. We're seeing it on the events, which is great. Talking about that home, we're moving on to the residential look and feel. And I think that also has a lot to do with how people are engaging. They're comfortable, they feel like they're at home, and then they're opening up more. It's kind of funny how the brain works that way, where you are home, you feel comfortable with people. So you're seeing that in the plush, the velour, the accents of the pillows, the more stylized pieces. These are all things, by the way, we're doing in corporate world. This isn't weddings and social. These are corporate events. And I think too, the two are blending now together. They are one and one. So it's not like you have to have a straight-lined piece that is so plain and no fluff to it. It's not that world anymore. We are seeing that design trickle into and blending with corporate. I'm showing you all corporate photos. So just keep that in mind. So you're seeing the plush side, the tufting, the velour, and creating that environment. And if it's overwhelming to you, you do not have to do the yellow that is in the other room. There are gray options, there are black options. You can start simple and then take another risk next year. See how they like it and blend it all together. And I was also calling it residential eclectic, because I think it's kind of fun to work like those patterned pillows and patterned rugs into it to make it